have a memory when I studied in Israel of my professor, Paul Liptz, who was telling me that everyone who makes aliyah to Israel, everyone who becomes an Israeli citizen, never forgets the day that they became Israeli citizens, that they landed in Israel. And Professor Liptz said, but me most of all. And I kind of was taken back, and I said, well, don't you think everybody enjoys that moment? And he said, well, of course, but I landed in Israel to make Aliyah the day before the Six-Day War. And it was this amazing moment of recognizing that often our life stories are mapped onto and are interwoven with history. Kira and Darwin, you both are interwoven with Jewish history. There is a lot going on in the world, and you have very much will always be able to say that this was quite the moment when you became Benot Mitzvah. In truth, friends, I was not planning on giving a sermon tonight. This was not part of, as I mentioned before, the playbook of this evening. It is really a night to celebrate all of you. It's a night to hear words of Torah and to celebrate our leadership, and history demands more. I want to highlight, of course, I think everyone in the room probably knows, but in case you do not, it is worth stating that a little more than 24 hours ago, Israel launched an attack, a strike, and what many are calling a preemptive strike on Iran and its nuclear facilities and its military leaders and scientists working on its military program. The first thing I want to, on its nuclear program. The first thing I want to say tonight to you is, in my opinion, this is far from preemptive. Preemptive would mean that the aggressor was planning to do something, and then the person or the other side out of self-defense goes and tries to do something big to avert or halt an attack. That, I don't believe, is the case, and I want to outline for you why. Iran has been a sponsor of terror and horror in Israel for decades now. 40-plus years of terrorist attacks sponsored by Iran. And when we think of all of the groups that we have been talking about over the last few years, Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, all of these are Iranian proxies. October 7th, yes, was an attack from Hamas, but I would argue, you could equally say it was an attack by Iran, because it is Iran who funds Hamas. It is Iran who tries their best every day to get rid of the state of Israel and, by the way, get rid of us, the United States of America. That is their stated goal. They say it all the time. And so when Israel strikes back, not before anything was done to Israel, after years, decades of attacks by Iran on Israel, including hundreds of missiles sent in the past year at civilians, Israel struck back. And Israel did so with precision, attacking military targets and targeting the nuclear facilities. The second thing I want to say this evening is that Hamas severely, severely miscalculated. On October 7th, Hamas tried to destabilize the Middle East. On September 22nd, I remember the day because it's my birthday. On September 22nd, Benjamin Netanyahu gave an interview on 60 Minutes saying, and this is September 22nd, 2023, that Israel and Saudi Arabia were incredibly close to normalizing relations. They were looking towards a peaceful and prosperous Middle East with an historic deal that would have changed the landscape of everything. And Hamas, in an attempt to get rid of that, to destabilize what would have been so good for Israel, launched the attacks of October 7th. They achieved the goal in destabilizing the Middle East, but not in the way they hoped for. In the ensuing months, as I know most of us know, in the 20 months since that attack, the Middle East, and especially the neighborhood in which Israel lives, has changed dramatically. Hamas no longer has the power to attack Israel the way that it did in 2023. Hezbollah is decimated, and Israel, this almost got lost in the news with everything else going on, how Israel, in a matter of weeks, was able to decimate its enemy to the northwest, and Syria is no longer. The Assad regime fell, poof, overnight. It just vanished. The landscape changed, but exactly in the opposite way that Hamas wanted. Pundits are saying right now that this is the reason, Hamas, ironically, is the reason why Israel was able to do what it did yesterday. Because Israel now didn't have to worry about immediate threats from its direct neighbors, the people with whom they share a border, without the fear of Syria and Lebanon and Gaza and the West Bank erupting into violence. Having all of that quiet has allowed Israel to do what it is doing. And the more I have read about what is happening in the Middle East, I have to tell you that I am astounded, I am amazed, and I have to say my heart soars a little bit in a good way. Hamas launched what I will tell you that my cousin, Rena's cousin actually, who is Israeli and serves in the IDF, he said this line to me that really stuck. Israel failed the pop quiz, but Israel is acing the exam. And what he meant by that was there is no doubt that Israel was caught completely off guard on October 7, 2023. And now we're seeing that part of the reason why for that utter failure is that Israel was studying how to attack and how to defend against the major threats, what it saw as the major threats, Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Iran. And we are watching Israel do things that truly look like they are coming out of movie scripts. I read just in this past 24 hours of the operations of Mossad, basically the CIA of Israel, sneaking into Iran, setting up drone airfield bases within the enemy country, all clandestine missions. They transformed everyday cars into all kinds of machinery and military might for Israel to decimate Iran before they even had a chance to try and defend against the precision strikes of Israel. All of this is unbelievable, and I will tell you right now, at this moment, and it is probably changing as we sit here, but at least for right now, it feels good to say that I am feeling a little bit of a 1967 vibe, a little bit of the immense horror and worry of Israel being surrounded by its enemies and launching an attack that averted utter disaster. I am hopeful in this moment, but I am also cautious, and I am also saying this with, as best as I can, the utmost humility, because we are still in this. We've been in it now for 20 months, and we will continue to be in this for a very long time. Which reminds me of my 8th grade American history classroom, where Mrs. Cohen, my teacher, said when she was talking about the American Civil War, that when the Battle of Gettysburg was over, nobody threw up their hands and said, "Hooray, we've won the turning point of the war." That would be silly, because nobody knew it at the time. Nobody knew that that would have turned the tide of that war. It took time, it took perspective and hindsight in order to understand the significance of that moment. We are not in a moment yet where we can really fully understand what we're living through. And so, because of that, we have to figure out, how do we get through this moment? How are we to figure out how to support each other when the dust is not only not yet settled, but truly swirling around us each and every moment. The first thing that I want to urge us to do in response to this chaotic moment where news is coming at us every second, please, and I'm wearing it tonight, but of course, it's covered by my talit, do not forget the hostages. There are 53 hostages still held, some alive, some of blessed memory no longer alive, but they are still there, and in our short attention span news cycles, it will be easy to suddenly keep our eyes in a totally different direction. Please don't forget about the hostages. We pray that they return, God willing, soon and in our days. The second thing that I want to highlight for you is that as all of this goes on, there is so much hate in this country against us, against the Jewish people. Rabbi Lefkowitz reminded me it feels like an eternity ago, but it was just last week that we had the situation that made many Jewish people feel deeply uncomfortable right here in Upper Dublin with a protest at the graduation of the Upper Dublin High School. I'm sure many of you saw that I wrote about this earlier this week, and we hold all of the people in our hearts who were affected by that. It is a scary, scary time to be Jewish. And regardless of what you think about what happened that day, and I tried my best to be even-handed in what I wrote on Facebook, the reality is Jews were scared in Upper Dublin. That should not happen. And it is our job to be vigilant when we see anti-Semitism and call it out in all of its forms. This has been a month of very scary times, and horror has struck the Jewish people. The murders of Yaron Lischinski and Sarah Milgram, the burning of peaceful protesters in Boulder, Colorado, just getting together to go for a run, to do this, to keep the hostages in our hearts and in our minds. Neither of those situations should be happening anywhere, and certainly here. Some of you may have saw Thomas Friedman wrote an opinion piece this very week. He wrote an opinion piece saying that the Netanyahu government is going to endanger Jews all around the world through their actions. And I want to call out and say that I disagree with that statement on its basis. Could you imagine an article published in the New York Times or anywhere that says Putin is putting Russian Americans in danger by his actions in Ukraine? It wouldn't even make sense that Russian Americans would be attacked in the streets or, God forbid, murdered because of the actions of Vladimir Putin all the way in Russia. Same with, could you imagine that Chinese Americans will be more endangered because of the conflict between China and Taiwan? No, that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be logical. And I've spoken about it from here, and Rabbi Lefkowitz has as well, and Rabbi Marks has as well, that anti-Semitism, for whatever reason, is different, and it's illogical. And people somehow make this connection in a way that wouldn't go for any other people, and it's wrong. Don't let people tell you that anti-Semitism in this country is justified because of what's going on in the world. Anti-Semitism is wrong always, no matter what. And we have to make sure in this day and time, while the dust has not yet settled, this I am sure of, that we must do our best to stamp out anti-Semitism from our midst. 10/7, October 7th, 2023, began what feels like for me an endless loop of fatigue, an endless loop of sadness. And I want to just share that with you, that this is not me being here saying, I know how to handle what's going on in the world. I have no idea. I really don't. I have no idea how to get out of this endless loop other than to rely on two things: this community and Jewish tradition. In the ancient world, the Jewish people were unique because most of the pagan societies saw the world as one endless loop. And I don't blame them. Think about it. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and of course it must go underneath and come back again. I see water that starts in the clouds and comes down and somehow makes its way back up, and so we have an endless loop. The ancient world saw us as stuck going round and round and round. And the Jewish people came along and said, no, we may be going round and round. That is true. But we are always moving forward. We are always moving no matter how dizzy we get. It is our job as Jewish people and our friends and families to hold on to a hope that moves us forward. The word in Hebrew, kadima, means forward, but the root of the word is kedem, which actually means past. It is our Jewish past that will propel us forward towards goodness and towards hope. To be Jewish is to be very confused right now in this world. I'll speak at least for myself. It is not an easy time. But because of all of you here, because of our leadership, because of this community, I am certain that it may not be a straight path, but we will move forward, kadima, with hope in our hearts.